My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset.
Right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here of Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the raspy dispatcher. I'm feeling extra raspy today for some reason. Hope you all are doing well. We are, well into February at the recording of this episode. Valentine's Day is just around the corner. I actually took Valentine's Day off, and my coworkers were giving me so much shit for it. They were like, "So you need the whole day for Valentine's Day? Like, you're not just going to dinner?" And I was like, "You know what? We have the staffing. I'm about to go not be here today. So, if you have the ability, let's treat that day just like any other holiday we want off, I'm gonna be continually plugging our new webinar series. If you have not heard about it, Dispatch Dialogues is our new webinar series that is more of a round table type of conversation where we're going to be bringing on folks kind of bi-monthly. We're hoping to do at least 6 webinars this year, talking to the current dispatcher, talking with current dispatchers, industry leaders about topics that affects the folks that are in the seats currently answering phones. So our first webinar is in March, and it's for the CTOs. I got a wonderful panelist of folks who are committed to training that next generation of 911 dispatchers. And we're going to be talking all about those conversations, those topics that affect you, the dispatcher who is training our future dispatchers, because training is tough, but training the new dispatchers is just as tough. So there is a fee to join this webinar, but with that fee, we are creating a sponsorship fund that I'm super excited about to really promote the continuing education of 911 dispatchers. With the money we raise from these webinars, we're going to be sending people to get their EMPs, covering conference costs, things of that nature. So check out theraspydispatcher.com to register for our next upcoming webinar. There's also a newsletter that you can subscribe to so you can get updates about the new webinars we have coming out. And yeah, that's the latest from theraspydispatcher.com, and I am super excited about it. So now on to today's episode. Today, I am joined by a frontline public safety telecommunicator from the city of Clearwater, Florida Police Department. Since starting in 2021, Will has taken on roles as a CTO, as a co-chair of the Public Affairs Committee for the Florida chapter of APCO, and is also a member of the APCO editorial committees for the PSC magazine. They are super passionate about fostering inclusivity in emergency services, as well as leading conversations on neurodiversity and the importance of building ECCs that reflect the diverse communities we serve. My guest today, Will Young.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Will. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having
Awesome.
me. I appreciate you. When I began my 911 journey, I had found you on YouTube. This was probably even pre Raspy Dispatcher LLC,
Oh
like
my
you
gosh.
actually making it a huge thing. And I remember I got my role, and then around that same time, you were switching agencies,
Mm.
and you had to go from being a midnight person to a day shift person. And I too, after my training was done, ended up becoming a day shift person after midnights, and we sort of talked back and forth for a little while about that. Don't know if you remember, but that did happen
Oh my
many
gosh.
eons ago. So however long you've been with your new agency, because
Oh
I
my
met
gosh.
you like right at the same time you moved to that agency.
Oh yeah, that's crazy. That's almost 3 years now. I'm
Yeah,
approaching
yeah,
3 years at my new agency, or maybe a
yeah.
little over. 3 years. That's
So
crazy. Well, I
yeah,
love that you found us on
yeah,
YouTube. It's always,
yeah,
I posted like a little, post that I made in 2022, this week, and it was like, "To my callers, like, thank you all for the blessings and feel betters, but I'm just raspy." Um, but if those old posts and old videos come up, like, on my Snapchat a lot. Snapchat, back in the
yeah,
day, Snapchat was popping, so I have a lot of, like, old memories that come up, and my very first YouTube videos when I was like, "We need to put information out there," was shown on that Snapchat, and it's just crazy how far this brand, the industry has come
yeah,
in
yeah.
such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and it's actually it's been a good thing. People like you and there's just so many people um, who are doing good things in 911 right now, and um, it's just good to see. Ricardo and you, and
Mhm.
there's so many people out there doing incredible things, just being essentially missionaries for the industry and
Heck
doing their very best to bring people in and help them understand, hey, this is what this is about. You're not just calling some faceless person. um, so yeah, I appreciate that, and I did learn a few things from those early YouTube videos. So
Well, thank you, and I mean, yeah, shout out Ricardo, man. As he says, he has been in these trenches
yeah,
promoting, dispatch for eons, been
yeah,
from the beginning, so definitely, I'm a big component of there's room for us all, right?
yeah,
Like anyone who
hmm,
wants to make a podcast, wants to start an organization, as long as we're having the conversation about 911 dispatching, like I am here for it. I
yeah,
want to help you with it. Like we are not gatekeeping here. The more, the
yep,
merrier. Let's
for
push this
sure,
message.
for sure, for sure. So
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into public safety and what drew you
yeah,
to work.
so um, I went to college to be a teacher.
Mm,
I have a significant amount of student debt related to that passion and that pursuit.
mm,
And I did that for a decade. I was
mm,
a teacher in the public school system in the Tampa Bay area for just right at 10 years. And the last few years of my life in education, I spent in special education, specifically working with young people who were blind or deaf or both.
mm,
And so a lot of people don't really know this, but in the United States, for now, allows a person to stay in the public school system until they're 23 years old if they have a diagnosed condition that
mm,
qualifies them. So I would work with young people who were toddlers and all the way up to 23 years of age. And
mm,
I really enjoyed it. But unfortunately, as I'm sure everybody watching knows, education has become one of, if not the most polarized and politicized
mm.
um, uh, public servitude careers, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Decisions were being made. I was forced to be making decisions that were rooted deeply in not putting the kid first. And
Mm,
I'm a public servant at heart. That's what I've always been. It's what I always will be. So I left education, went and did my own thing, worked for some of the apps, started my own personal concierge business,
mm,
and did that. Ran a wedding business that I had been running on the side while I was a teacher. I went full
mm,
time doing that and producing weddings and marrying folks, and enjoyed it. It was great. But then I met my now beautiful wife in 2020. In the middle of the pandemic. And
mm,
as time went on, I realized that as much as I enjoy waking up when I want to, doing what I want to, it is not really a future proof
mm,
path. And like I said, I'm a public servant at heart. I've always been a public servant. And so I'm a huge newspaper nerd. I still read the newspaper now. Of course, it's online. So I had stumbled upon an article in our local newspaper about a former teacher who became a dispatcher
mm,
with my agency. And I had knew several of the cops from that agency. I had delivered their groceries and become a part of their, their daily lives. And I knew it was a great agency to be a part of. And reading the article, listening to Kellen was his name. He ended up being my trainer, listening to his transition from education to 911 and how basically there's a huge overlap over both of them. I was like, this is probably something I can do, and applied and got the job, and that's where I am at today. And now I am trying to take more of that educator portion of me, because after all, I did spend a lot of money to learn how to be a good teacher. And so now I'm trying to use that to better. And one of the things, one of my, I don't want to say like passion projects, but it really is sort of a passion. 911, the staffing crisis in 911 is real. Like, we know it. Everybody watching this knows, if you work in a center that's fully staffed, I do, you are in the minority. Like that, it's not a common thing. And I happen to be an autistic person. So, that's who I am. That's who I've been. I got a late in life diagnosis in 2008 when I was 20 some odd years old. After years and years of being the weird kid, I finally got diagnosed, and I have autism. Back in the day when I got diagnosed, it was called Asperger's syndrome. That doesn't exist anymore. Now there's levels, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I am not capable of doing this job. And I really started to see how many other people I know that are like me, that are, the autism community hates the word high functioning, but those who are on the more high functioning end of the autism spectrum, or those who are high functioning with ADHD or dyslexia, or et cetera, all of these brain related diagnoses, they can do this job. It just may require a few accommodations. And so that has sort of become my thing. That's what I am now. You are the raspy dispatcher. Let's get, the world needs more dispatchers. Let's train them on how to get into this job. Let's tell them about this job. Let's train them on this job. Ricardo is okay, we've got to keep, I don't want to be labeled the autistic dispatcher guy, but I want people to understand that it's time for us, if we want to solve the staffing crisis, it's time for us to start looking at other things. And so that's where I'm at now. And I was very, very honored to speak at the Dare to Be Great conference from within the trenches, the last supposedly Dare to Be Great conference. And I was blown away by the reception to my presentation, which is basically, hey, we got to start fostering inclusivity in our ECCs. We have to start letting the brains in our ECCs match the brains of the communities we serve. And I got news for you. Every person that's in our community is dealing with something, or their brain is working in a different way. So that's where I'm at, and that's my platform, for lack of a better word.
I love it. And I think what if you unpack it, what it really comes down to is our centers need to change, period.
Correct.
We have been so ingrained in doing this job a certain way. I've had conversations in both my centers, like with upper leadership, who have said, well, we've always done this way. Like that is a common.
And that is the most annoying phrase.
It is. It's like, what? Okay. Like,
and I don't know who to attribute it to, but my favorite counter to that is, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always gotten. Yeah. And right now in 911, what we've always gotten is empty chairs, empty consoles. We don't have the staff because we continue to do what we've always done. And going all the way back to your intro and you and I conversing today, it's a big deal because organizations like yours and Ricardo's, and there's so many other people out there in the 911 space doing things. There's so much money that has been spent on upgrading our technology. Next generation 911, that's the thing. We're going to have video in here. We're going to have text. We're going to do all these things. There's so much money that has been spent on Next Gen 911 and Next Gen 911 outreach, equal attention needs to be on the practices related to the people,
Mhm.
because the technology is great, but at the end of the day, AI is never going to be dispatching an EMS unit, a cop. They're AI's. I don't care what any human on planet Earth
Mhm.
says. AI is never going to be a dispatcher. Will it
Correct.
assist dispatchers?
Mhm.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
an AI, a computer, is never going to be a dispatcher. It's just never going to happen. And
Mhm.
so now it's time to take some of that energy and that effort that we are putting into next gen 911 technology and put it into the practice of people. And that's why I love what you're doing, Ricardo, and so many others. And I know I just keep
Mhm.
dropping Ricardo's name, but
No, no, please.
trust me, there
Ah,
are tons of people out there like Ashley and
yeah.
Ricardo in the 911 space doing incredible people oriented things. And I just want to contribute to that because there are other people out there like me or who have some type of brain that is doing something differently that are more than capable of sitting down at a console and being damn good call takers and dispatchers.
1,000%. And one thing, like, that I found interesting, I had I can't think of who it was, but someone else was on the podcast, and they made a point, like, we do shift work, like,
Mhm.
your day shift, mids, grave, like, it's very standard. Um, and they were talking about the staffing crisis, and they had made the suggestion, like, why don't we offer a different schedule that would help meet someone's availability that's outside of our what we're known for.
Mhm.
If someone if we only work 12, if someone wants to work 5/8s, why don't we make that happen to
Yeah.
offset our staffing
Mhm.
shortage? Because if they can't work the 12, we just say no rather
Yep.
than
And
modify.
we say, well, this is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way
Mhm.
we continue to do it.
Yeah.
And again, that's why that seat will remain empty.
And when you speak to people-centered solutions, like, not only are we talking about staffing shortages as in we wanna get new dispatchers in here, we're speaking highly about retention
Mhm.
because once you're a trained dispatcher, you know, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you can at any point, if that department pisses you off enough, like,
Yeah.
you can leave because there is
Yeah.
another opening at the department down the street, and I'm not saying cut your department and leave,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, at the drop of a dime. Grass is not always greener,
Yeah.
but our departments at this moment, historically, do not have the mindset that there isn't this loyalty factor built in
Yeah.
to our agencies like there was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
There is a, "What are you doing for me?" And,
Mhm.
"Are you open to having conversations?" Because
Yeah.
just doing what I want you to do as your employee, like, this is a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Our departments, our businesses, but when able, do you meet your people? When
Yeah. Yeah.
able, are you advocating for us? When able, are you showing up for us? And it's not gonna be you're not gonna win every
Yeah.
time, but
Yeah.
are you doing it? And when
And you
you're
can't
not,
make
people leave.
it's not a situation of making everybody happy, but it
Exactly.
is looking at the people you have and
Mhm.
discovering what it is that is driving them. And I'll brag about my agency. We
Yeah.
underwent a tremendous administration shift several years ago, and our new manager is an incredible individual. They have
Mhm.
significant law enforcement background. They retired from the agency as a sworn officer, no dispatch background though, and
Mhm.
they brought this person in because what they lack in dispatch knowledge, excuse me, they more than make up for in leadership.
Mhm.
And one of the very first things they did is had a conversation with each and every single person,
Mhm.
frontline, whatever it was, each and every single person they had a discussion with, and monumental changes happened.
Mhm.
And they didn't happen quick, and they made it very clear they're not going to happen quick. But at the end of the day, they realized it's people.
Yeah.
And we have been fully staffed since the new managers, I want to say fourth or fifth month.
Mm,
And our retention is higher than it was in the short time I was there before they came on board. We
mm,
lost probably four, five, six dispatchers in
mhm.
just a few months
Yeah.
because I was, and that's how it was. And so, and it just even like with me, you know, the new manager recognizes I am who I am.
Mhm,
um, they love to call me their favorite pain in the ass, but I am who I am, and they recognize that. But they also recognize where my strengths lie,
mm,
and they encourage me as long as I'm not out there bad mouthing our agency, which I would never do, or bad mouthing any individuals in our agency, our city, whatever. Have at it is
mm,
essentially what I've been told, and that's why I'm able to be here today because they know that I'm out here. They know that I'm out here advocating. They know that I'm out here trying to, um, you know, make the industry better. And
mhm.
when you get the right leadership in place that's willing to listen to their people, that's all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And, it's funny, I've recently seen, excuse me, on in response to the, like, LA wildfires or I guess Disneyland offered, like, free entry for firefighters, and a lot of people, um, were jumping on like, "This is wonderful, but don't forget the dispatchers, don't forget the dispatchers." And the
Yeah,
response to that from a lot of people was, "Well, if you're in this job just to get recognized, like, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and no, 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 no." And my response to things like that is like, no one like the free Disneyland ticket, cool,
yeah,
great.
yeah,
But the underlying issue that people, I think, are trying to point at is that if these companies, if these big places don't even think about the dispatchers, we're missing retention and, you know, um, recruitment because no one's thinking of dispatchers.
yeah,
And that's why we're having these conversations. That's why we're putting out podcasts. That's why we're pushing this message, not because we all want a pat on the back and an award,
yeah,
but when we have these conversations and we are recognized on these huge platforms, when Disney says first responders are dispatchers as well, people start to go, I could be a dispatcher. Like, let me
yeah,
look into that. Like, that's the
yeah.
piece that gets lost. Like,
Mhm.
and that it's like we're just looking for people to acknowledge that we exist. So they want to be us for Halloween as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but being able to come into a center, acknowledge that you don't know all the answers is amazing, and I think that was the biggest step for buy-in that your manager, who I don't know,
yeah,
probably did, because
yeah,
when you go into a center and you own your downfalls, like, I'm still the shit, but, like, also, I recognize I'm lacking here, and I'm gonna pour or pull on you to help me, where I'm
yeah,
lacking. That creates
yeah,
buy-in, that creates trust, and that's probably helped create the situation that you folks are in now, which
yeah.
being fully staffed in a
It's
large
beautiful.
area is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's beautiful. I mean,
Mhm.
it's and not only were changes made to our schedule, so now all of us have weekends off, not the people that have been doing it for 40 years.
Okay, that is
Yeah,
I'm sorry, pause. That is the most simple retention change
correct.
that
Yeah,
any center, if you are listening and you do not
yeah,
put your folks on a rotating weekend
yeah,
vibe, I don't know how to articulate it for you now, but there's plenty of centers that do it. That little chunk of the weekend,
yeah,
X amount of time of the year,
yeah.
retention will go up
Because
90
everything in our world, from a
90%.
social aspect,
Mhm.
happens on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So
I
when
mean,
you come
yeah.
into a job, and here's the thing, I'm 40 years old. I turned 40 in May. When I interviewed, they made it abundantly clear you're probably not going to have the weekends off for a very long time. And I was
Mhm.
okay with that because,
Well, it's
you
like, "I'm
know,
not in the club anymore, I'm good,"
yeah, yeah, there's all these, but then the new manager came in and realized, well, the only people I'm gonna like, I can't attract people by telling them they're never gonna have a Friday or Saturday or Sunday off for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And I get it. My
Mhm.
my veteran partners that I work with, is it frustrating? Absolutely, because they came into this industry at a time where you had to earn everything. And they
Mhm.
are at a point where they have, after 30, 40 years, earned everything. And
Mhm.
then it's been taken away from them, or they feel it's been taken away from them. But they have to understand it's not being taken away from you. It's actually really helping you because you've
Mhm.
been there 30, 40 years. You've built up so much vacation time. Now you can actually take it. Like
Right?
you can literally take close to, I mean, we work 14 days a month. You
Yeah.
can take an entire month off
Yeah, I don't wanna
sometimes.
see you go to a
Like,
place where you're on a
and
beach, you know?
yeah, so it's just about shifting a mindset, and that's why I'm
Mhm.
so grateful for things like the Raspy Dispatcher within the trenches, and just all these organizations, all these podcasts, these social media platforms, Latinas of 911, all these
Mhm.
platforms, just doing these incredible things to say, hey, we're here, and we exist, and we're trying to make this a better industry.
Yeah, and I mean, and what we're really talking about is a culture shift, right?
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
saying you can take time off. You're sick? Look,
Yeah.
we have the staffing. Call in, don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Like take your vacation. You're having a
Yeah.
bad day, you just need to take care of yourself. Do it. We have the stat like so we have been ingrained, and even me, I've been doing this, almost 7 years now. And even for me, like I was taught, like you show up, you plug in. If you're late, that's not good. Your partner wants to
Yeah.
go home, and I mean, even now, I could be in the hospital tied up to an IV and still be like, okay, I gotta call, I gotta call, I gotta
Yeah.
call, I gotta let them know. And
Yeah.
it's not my center
Yeah.
that's making me feel like that. It's the culture of our industry,
Yeah.
and we're shifting that. We're telling people
Yes.
it's okay, and
Yeah.
that's a hard reset
And
for.
and it's not like we're shifting it because we're trying to fight against some type of large monumental change. The reality is the workforce is shifting. I
Mhm.
wrote an article for PSC Magazine a couple months ago, talking about millennials and Gen Z and the generation after them. And the reality is the way they are, and you can call it entitled, you can call it whatever you want. It's not, but you can call it that if it makes you feel better. It's just adjusting to the times. And I think
Yeah.
one of the worst, not worst, but one of the hardest things that those that have been in 911 for a long time, in my brief experience here, one of the hardest things for them to accept is that it's time to change.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
CAD, I believe computer aided dispatch was truly the last monumental change to happen
Mhm.
to 911 and
Mhm.
dispatch. And now there's probably been easily a dozen or more monumental changes to the industry that
Mhm.
folks have just ignored
Yeah.
because it makes them uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
it's time to stop doing that. And for me, that is really recognizing that every human's brain is completely different.
Yeah.
And just because they talk a certain way, or just because they act a certain way, or they come off this certain way, doesn't mean that they can't do this job. I
Yeah.
am damn good at my job. Do
Mhm.
I annoy all my partners? Abso-fucking-lutely. Like, I mean, I'm not, I know who I am, you know?
Mhm.
I always like to joke with people when I first got diagnosed with autism. I was at a family gathering and we were around the table, just, shooting the breeze, whatever the case may be. And my mom was talking to somebody and she goes, oh, yeah. And Buddy, that's my family name, Buddy just got diagnosed, just found out he's suffering from autism. And I said,
Mhm.
whoa, 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 whoa. Let's slow down here. I am not suffering from anything. If
Mhm.
anything, now that I have a formal diagnosis, I'm more free than I've ever been in my entire life. Now, if
Mhm.
all of you people around me are suffering, well, that's a you problem. That is not a me problem. And so, that's what I'm really trying to hit home with the industry is look, there are some incredibly qualified people out there who may be autistic, who may have ADHD, who may have dyslexia, who may have dysprasia. There, all these neuro uh, atypical diagnoses out there are not automatic qualifiers, but because we haven't grown our recruitment practices, because we haven't grown our onboarding practices, these people are being left out. of a job that they could potentially do incredible at.
Yeah, this is a genuine concern from people because I've had people ask, like, on my YouTube videos and things like that, if I've been diagnosed with XYZ, will I be automatically disqualified? Like, these are genuine concerns for people who have certain
Yeah,
diagnosis, and with that in mind, like, what are some of these hiring or onboarding practices that
yeah,
may unintentionally exclude
yeah.
neurodiverse folks?
So, to understand these practices and why they would exclude somebody, we have to really look at what neurodiversity is. First of all, anyone who would sit there and tell you that it is a buzzword, that it is a fad, that it is this, that it's all this, it's just the media and doctors trying to make a buck, they're completely wrong. All right.
Mhm,
Um, because the reality is, neurodiversity may have come into popularity a couple decades ago as a word, but every human being on the planet's brain has been different. There are no two brains on this planet that are the same.
mhm.
So, yes, I am part of the neurodivergent community and I'm proud of that. And I preach on that and I talk about that. But so are you, Ashley. So is anybody else watching or listening to this podcast. We are
Mhm.
all neurodivergent, and that is what I aim to really bring to the industry, is this understanding that let's start rethinking some of these practices. Let's start rethinking some of these things. So first and foremost, the biggest thing I think, and there's so many 911 agencies that are still doing this, is a
Mm,
psychological evaluation.
mm.
There are so many agencies still doing a psychological evaluation. I raise the roof and praise hands like crazy that my agency did
Mhm,
not have a psychological evaluation as part of
mm.
our onboarding. We
Oh,
had a physical, and it was a thorough physical, and the doctor, the occupational doctor, asks these questions about your mental health and all these things, and obviously you answer it honestly because this is something that goes back to your employer, and if you find out you don't answer it honestly, it becomes a thing. But if there had been a psychological evaluation that I was responsible for doing as part of the onboarding process, part of getting hired, I wouldn't be here today,
mm.
because I'm an incredibly intelligent person, and yes, extremely humble also. But um I would fail a psychological evaluation every single time, because the way I'm wired, I I can't just read something and take it at surface value. All
Mm,
right. So, especially when I know it's part of an evaluation process, even more so if it's part of an evaluation process. Like all
mm.
these free online quizzes that everybody loves to do, I try to stay away from them,
Yeah.
because I will answer them and be like, well, let me go back and change that. Even though it says, just go with your gut instinct, your first answer. Well, my first answer is all of them. And that's, you can't choose that. So,
Yeah.
psychological evaluations are a huge, huge barrier to access in 911. And
Mm,
honestly, this is a job where you do have to have a strong mental health and a strong mental well being.
mhm.
But if anybody says that we're all not a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in 911, they're lying. Like, it takes a certain kind of not normal to do this job.
Mhm.
And a psychological evaluation may accentuate that non-normalcy in a person and disqualify them from it, even though they would make a damn fine, a damn good dispatcher. You
Yeah,
know,
it's interesting that you're bringing up the psych exam because I, like, do a little video, I'm like, and I just tell people, "I don't know the science behind it. I just know it's
yeah,
required. This is the format of it. I know there's articles on the questionnaire that they put out,
yeah,
but I have no knowledge of, like, why, who, what, where, just, like, this is what it looks like to kinda help bring down people's anxiety." And another one everyone talks about a lot is the polygraph, so
yeah,
why we have this as part of our process? Like,
yeah.
I
Like,
don't
I
is
get
there a
it.
better way
Even
to
though the federal government says we're secretaries,
Mm,
we are secretaries that carry an extreme amount of liability.
Mhm.
And I get that. I understand that. And as a police chief or a sheriff or an agency director, I know that at the top, the biggest thing on their minds is let's make sure we have people in those chairs who, they're not going to lie their way through a call. They're
Mhm.
not going to melt the moment the call goes south, or they're not going to freak out the moment the officer keys up and says shots fired, officer down.
Mhm.
There, let's make sure we have strong mental people with strong mental capabilities in those seats. But
Mhm.
listen, I now have talked to so many people in 911. I
Mhm.
have had so many conversations in Florida, outside of Florida. Not everybody, a lot of people in 911 are either self-medicating,
Mhm.
or they're going and they're getting formal diagnosis and they're getting
Mhm.
medication so that they can work through whatever mental health issues they're having.
Yeah.
And I want to say to myself, if they had to go back today and redo the polygraph, redo the psyche eval, would they still be qualified for this job?
Mm.
And we're talking people who I think of a person. I won't name their agency. I won't, refer to them. But I'm thinking of a person in an agency, a rural agency, one of two seats. They've been filling one of the seats now for going on 35 years,
Mm.
and they struggle because a new sheriff is in town, a new chief, whatever you want to call it, and as part of their review process, it came to light that this individual, who's been doing this job, mind you, for 35 years in this rural community, is on an antidepressant, and there was a big to do about it. Now, thankfully,
Yeah.
for now, the federal government forbids, firing somebody for something like that, or whatever the case may be. But it sucks because they've been in that chair for 35 years. Never
Yeah.
once has their mental abilities, capabilities, or lack thereof ever been questioned,
Yeah.
you know? And so now they are having to say, well, I guess it's time for me to retire and it's like, no, advocate for yourself,
Yeah.
because you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
No, for sure.
everybody, yeah. And the difference is, instead of going home and self-medicating, because our
Yeah.
job is fucking hard, pardon my language,
Mhm.
it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we deal with some of the most insane stuff on a daily basis, and we never get to see it, and 99% of the time we never know how it ends.
Mhm.
And that is hard for any human on earth.
Mhm.
So you're either self-medicating or you're getting professional help,
Mhm.
period. And I'm grateful because, at least in my area, I don't know about out west and other areas, but in the South, there is we have a lot of leaders in 911 who are prioritizing health and wellness.
Mm.
And APCO, the national organization, is
Mhm.
really starting to prioritize health and wellness. And those
Mhm.
conversations are happening, and I think it's great. But from the perspective of hiring and retaining neurodiverse individuals, the big barrier is those psych evals, those polygraph tests, because
Mhm.
almost all of us are going to fail them every single time.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because a psych test doesn't really tell you who Will Young is.
Mhm.
Now, if you
Mhm.
want to know who I am, I could tell you for the next 15 hours who I am. But if you sit me down at a computer and force me to answer a bunch of questions,
Mhm.
that's not going to give you a picture of who I am. If anything, because of how my brain works and because of how honest I'm going to answer those questions, you're going to think I'm the biggest arrogant asshole prick, and you're not going to want to hire me
Yeah.
because you think I'm going to be a cancer in your center. Even though you talk to anybody I work with and they will tell you, am I weird? Yeah, Will's weird. Is
Mhm.
he cocky? Will's cocky. Does he
Mhm.
sometimes come off as arrogant? Yes. But you know what? I know that Will always has my back, and I know that if I don't know something, I can go to Will, and he's not going to give me any shit for it. He's not going to make me feel bad for it. And if he doesn't know the answer, he's going to know where to find the answer, and he's going to help me. And
Mhm.
that's who I am. But a
Mhm.
psychological evaluation isn't going to tell you that. A psychological evaluation is going to tell you I'm a know-it-all,
Yeah.
or I think I'm a know-it-all. And like I always tell my kids, it's not that I know everything, but I do know a lot about a lot. And it's the same in this industry. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly in the journals. I'm constantly on the blogs. I'm constantly watching the videos and the podcasts because that's how I am with anything I love. And
Mhm.
so for me, that is the biggest thing that I really want agencies, as I talk more and more in this space about inclusivity, and
Mhm.
honestly, diversity, equity, inclusivity, they have basically been added to Carlin's list of words you're not allowed to say in public anymore.
Mhm.
And that sucks
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
we were at a precipice where so many incredible things were happening all over, not just in 911, but just all
Mhm.
over, surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now, I'm like a pariah having these conversations where we need to make our emergency communication centers as diverse as the community they serve. We need to include these neurodiverse people in there. ADHD should not stop you from being able to have a job as a 911 dispatcher. Do you move? Do you have this need to move all the time? Okay, well, let's put you at the standing desk. Let's get
Mhm.
you a walking pad. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these things we can do that we're just not
Mhm.
doing because it all goes back to that. We just want to do the way we've always done.
Yeah. And I mean, now is the most important time to continue having these conversations, right? Is when it's being highly scrutinized,
Yeah.
and it doesn't change the fact that the conversations need to be had. Whatever word anybody wants to use
Yeah.
to point out what needs to happen in our centers, it
Yeah.
still needs to happen. I like my biggest pet peeve about our prior hiring process is our pre-employment test and the fact that we make them pass fail. And if you
Yeah.
fail by 1 point, you fail. And it's just like, it's insane to me
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
you have such dramatic shortages that
Yeah.
we create this barrier for people, like you're
Mhm.
suggesting with the psych exam, to make it into training to see if they could actually do this job. It's
Yeah.
just, we shouldn't just now. Some people would be like, well, we're lowering all of our standards and we're just getting anybody and anybody. Like, obviously, create the process that still allows you to vet people
Yeah.
and you take information and make informed decisions. But when we're just putting barriers, when we're putting
Yeah.
walls and just letting people ram their head into it, we don't
Yeah.
even get to the conversation of, can you do this job?
And we're not looking to the other industries that have had monumental staffing crisis and have addressed them.
Mm,
As a public
mhm,
educator,
mhm,
25 years ago, there was such a critical shortage of teachers in the United States of America. And it's not that much better, but it has improved a lot.
mhm,
And here's
mhm,
why. 2 decades ago, almost 3 decades now, somebody at the very top said, hey, you know what? When a military member retires, they may not have an education degree, but they can take command of a classroom. Why
mhm,
don't we allow these? Why don't we give these folks in the military? Why don't we give these folks in the first responder arena? Why don't we give these folks in business who have had successful business? Why don't we give them an alternative way to enter education? And let's see what that does to our critical staffing shortage. And so 25, 26 years ago, alternative certification in education became this huge thing. And you would see school districts advertise to hire teachers and say, no education degree required. And then, of
mhm,
course, the longtime educators say, well, we're lowering the standards. But I
mhm,
got news for you. Even as a student who benefited from
mhm.
alternative education, some of the teachers that I had who were alternatively certified were some of the best damn teachers, and I still
Yeah.
remember them to this day. I had a teacher who was a colonel in the United States Army.
Mm,
He was my psychology teacher. He
mhm,
was incredible.
mhm,
Like, I learned so much from him, but he didn't go and study psychology. He
mhm,
was able to take the state education exam for social studies with
mhm,
emphasis in psychology, and he did very well on it. And he was an incredible teacher. And I
mhm,
learned so much about the psychology of people from
mhm,
him because he was a leader of people for so long.
mhm,
And I just think that if 911 really, really wanted to address the crisis, and
mhm,
there are a lot of people out there in 911 who do. I
Yeah.
mean, I could name names, and I've come in contact with them, and there are a lot of people serving in our industry associations, APCO and NENA, that want to address this,
Mhm.
seriously want to address this,
Mhm.
but they are hitting the brick walls of the, well, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
And until more people continue to speak up and say, we've always done it this way. If we continue to do it this way, we're always going to get what we got. Then we're going to have that issue. And I do feel like alternative certification in education is just the best example of what happens when you think outside the box.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. And it's I think it's kind of a prime example of like when I talk about dispatching being such a great entry level job, is because you don't need any dispatch experience to do this
Yeah,
job. Just simply living life kind of prepares you to step into this role and be trained to do this job in the community that you serve. Um, but a lot of people get kind of caught up in the, well, I've never done XYZ, or
yeah,
how do I, and then we don't talk about dispatching. So then there's not even a foundational level of understanding of what we do to even
yeah,
be able to like conceptualize and see yourself in these roles, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just really offering the education, offering the
yeah,
knowledge, and making the changes in our centers. And more importantly, in regards to change in our centers, if it don't work, you could switch back.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, you could implement this thing and go, "Ah, that didn't work." Re-implement the whole thing, or re-implement, like, you could try and try and try. Like,
yeah,
I that's another thing we have a hard time reminding ourselves of when we talk about change. You can always change back. Like,
yeah,
it's doesn't
yeah.
have to be permanent, you know?
And the thing is, again, it also comes back to culture,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
there are so many centers, and I know you know this just as well as anybody. There are so many centers where that toxic culture
mm,
is alive and well,
alive and well.
and
Mm,
no matter what anyone is trying to do, nothing positive ever happens.
mhm,
And so, people will come in, and they get through an already arduous process to get to the console. They
mhm.
sit down, and their CTO sits next to them and says, I've been doing this for 35 years. And all you young 20 somethings that come in
Mhm,
here, you all think you know everything, and you
mhm,
all think that you can do this job better than me. I'm going to tell you right now, you're
mhm.
never going to do this job as good as me. And it's like, um, okay, yeah, you're right, because I'm actually probably going to quit in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
because this is absolutely terrible.
Ugh,
Um,
it is
and then in many
a
ways,
frustrating.
that's why I'm grateful for my autism, because shit like that really doesn't get to me. I mean,
Mhm.
not that I had any bad trainers. I don't work with any bad people. I don't want anybody listening to think that, but um, as I interact with more people over the course of my time in 911, and I hear the stories, and it's like, thank God I'm autistic. Because if I really cared, like if I was really like emotionally invested in the stuff around me,
Mhm,
I would constantly be on the verge of a meltdown. Like,
mhm.
some of the stories I hear in these centers are just insane. It's like,
It's it's wild. It's one
yeah,
of my disclaimers. Like, I just, like, re-upped all my videos and re-recorded and stuff, and one of the things I am saying constantly in the videos are like, "So you wanna be a dispatcher? Let's talk about it," is not all centers are created equal, and we do have a industry history of being toxic, and we're not hiding that, and we're talking about it. It's changing, but it's a reality. So
yeah,
me telling these aspiring dispatch not telling aspiring dispatchers that that exists would be a disservice. Like, dispatching isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There's a
yeah,
lot of shit we need to fix and work on.
yeah,
And I'm not giving you a career that's perfect. I'm giving you a career that is amazing, that has its faults, and still has a lot of growing to do. But yeah, we're going to talk about it. We have toxic centers. We have folks who are stuck in their ways, and, you know, mental health and self-care need to be on the forefront of every department. let alone every center. And we got a lot of work to do. But
Yeah.
I think, folks like you and me and all the other organizations out there, like we're doing it. We're taking the steps
Yeah.
consistently to make these changes,
Yeah. And that was one of the things when I first approached this idea of, are you sure you want to go out there and put yourself out there like
Mm,
this? And
man.
it wasn't
Yeah.
just there were 911 people who were like, you do realize that you will become a pariah. Like, you're going out there and you're openly telling people that you are dealing with this mental health thing and you're in public safety. It's gonna eventually come back to bite you in the butt. And that may be, it hasn't yet,
Mhm.
but the reason why I'm talking about it is we are already working with people like me,
Yeah.
and they're already there, but
Yeah.
they've been so afraid to be themselves. And one of the biggest hurdles that the neurodivergent community faces, the working neurodivergent community faces, is it's called masking.
Mhm.
And masking is essentially, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's becoming something different to fit into your neurotypical surrounding. And many neurodivergent people are incredibly great at it. But the problem is masking in emergency communications perpetuates burnout,
Mhm.
because masking is already so um, thought intensive, so physically and physiologically intensive for the neurodiverse person, that uh, add on, you're on the phone with a woman who just found her 1-year-old child face down in the swimming pool, and
Mhm.
you're trying to walk her through infant CPR.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, you have your partner next to you who, sees you calm, cool, and collected, but they don't understand that that is work you. And then
Mhm.
you go home and you become a version, the version of you, but now you also have all that additional weight. And so for neurodivergent folks in emergency communications, it's elevated. And um, and I think that that is also another reason why uh, we're not applying for these jobs like
Mhm.
we need to, or should,
Yeah.
because we are scared to take on that additional thing. And for me, the way my brain works and the way I am able to sit there and take a car crash with a person flipped upside down that's going to need extricated, walk it through the process, do everything I need to do, get the units there, and then turn around and take a concerned citizen because there's a suspicious person walking down the street, and still handle them with
Mhm.
professionalism and everything, because none of this is about me.
Mhm.
And that is my mask. That is how I have learned to be a working professional. It's what I did for 10 years in the classroom. I taught middle school for 5 years, and I don't know if anybody watching or listening knows this, but
Mm.
middle school kids are some of the biggest
True.
a-holes on the planet.
True. They're just
All
learning
right.
how to be assholes,
Yeah. And so when you are bald,
know?
overweight, and autistic, and you're standing in front of a classroom of middle school children, um, the things that get said to you are pretty crazy. And
Yeah.
so the way I've developed my mask is that I just maintain this level attitude of, it's not me. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't flip that car. I didn't
Mhm.
break into the person's house. I didn't run the bicyclist over. And
Mhm.
so I approach, every time I answer that phone, I approach it from the perspective of, I have a job. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do everything within my power to provide a positive outcome for this constituent. And then I'm going to hang up and I'm going to do it again for the next one and the next one and the next one. And when I have a radio group, I'm going to know where all of my units are. I'm going to treat them like human freaking beings, because that's one thing we do in dispatch is we act like our units are little pawns, and
Mhm.
yeah, we tell them where to go and what to do, but at the end of the day, they're also humans. Like,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
as a human who people don't often think about the human side of me,
Mhm.
I really, really am very empathetic to the needs of my units, and it sometimes makes me a bit of a problem, I'll say. But at the end of the day, the suspicious guy walking down the street, who has no weapons, who isn't doing anything other than walking in a neighborhood where they don't look like they belong, that is not as important as my unit's bladder, who I
Yeah.
know has not been able to take a piss in
Mhm.
almost 4.5 hours because I've been
Yeah.
sending them back to back to back to back. So
1000%.
I'm gonna give them the opportunity to go use the bathroom, and then they can go to that.
Yeah.
And so that's as a dispatcher, it's all about making sure every one of my units knows I know they're human, and then also again providing the best possible outcome for the constituent and making sure that that unit gets home to their family or whatever it is that they have at the end of every tour. And that's, there's so many others out there like me, Ashley, who could
Yeah.
do the same exact thing, you
And I
know?
think I think the most important part about what you're saying is that there are people out there like you. And I think that like my partner works in higher ed for a university out here, has been working in higher ed forever. And they had recently went to their like APCO NENA conference type of deal for their industry. And an individual from the queer community was giving a keynote speech and talking about inclusivity and making spaces safe, for people. And, one of the things they said is quite often people in leadership roles say, well, that doesn't apply to us because we don't have XYZ at our center, at our organization, at our whatever. And the reality is, you do. You might not
Yeah,
know it. They might be masking, they might not be out
yeah,
to the workforce, but you have these people in your
yeah.
center, period. They exist.
Yeah.
So you need to
And so and
operate.
that's why I am here. That's why I
Mhm.
will continue to be here. That's why I will
Yeah.
continue to have these conversations, because like in just my center,
Mhm.
me being, I don't want to say out, but me being who I am, me being
Mhm.
open about the
Mhm.
fact that I'm autistic has encouraged not one, not two, but three other individuals who have been working with me before I got there, two of
Mhm.
them anyway, to say, hey, just so y'all know, I am too.
Mhm.
And, and it allows everybody to understand, okay, so this might be why that person has always done this for so many years. And that little thing that's irritated me that I've never really addressed with them because I just love to stew and stew and stew and let it add to my toxic cloud that surrounds me.
Mhm.
This is why they're like that. That makes sense now. And they
Mhm.
may not understand it still, and they may not even be welcoming to it. But if I had to be the very first person to get out there and say, listen, autistic people, ADHD people, people with dyslexia, people with dysprasia, all these people who have all of these things, and there's this huge umbrella that neurodiverse conditions fall under. It's huge. All
Mhm.
these people with all of these things, if they feel like they can do this job, apply, damn it. Apply, go through the
Mhm.
process. But agencies, equally, let's make the process a little more accessible, because right
Mhm.
now, in large part, it's not that accessible.
Mhm.
And we justify the lack of accessibility by saying, well, this is a hard job. This is the way it's always been. If you can't do this, how are you going to protect your unit? If you can't do this, how are you going to make sure that the mom whose baby is drowning has the proper protocols read to her? If you can't do this, and it's not about that.
Mhm.
Just because you can't do something doesn't mean you're not able to learn how to
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah. 1000%. Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever. I mean, I feel like this has
This
been
is my passion project. I could literally
wonderful.
go on for hours and hours and hours. I did submit a paper for APCO in Baltimore, so hopefully I'll get to be able to be there and have this discussion with more people because it needs to be had. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to allow me to have this conversation with you and your audience because, you know, I know the type of people that listen to the Raspy Dispatcher podcast and, you know, they're movers and shakers, they're doers. And these are conversations that need to be had,
No.
even in spite of, and if not, because of the conversations that are happening globally right now around inclusion and equity.
100%. Well, the last question I normally ask at the end of the episode is, what advice would you give someone who's considering being a dispatcher? But I'm going to change it just a little bit to speak to your passion project, which is what advice would you give to the neurodiverse individual who's considering applying to this role?
Do it. Just do it. This is the best job on the freaking planet. If you are a neurodiverse person, chances are you're easily bored. You get bored very fast. No 2 days are ever the same in our industry. They're always something different. And don't think just because the process is this way right now that it's going to stay that way. And maybe don't be like me. And if the process is there, don't let it scare you. Take the psych and see what happens. Who knows? Maybe, you know, maybe you'll come out on top. But at the end of the day, don't believe for 1 second because you have a diagnosis that's mental health related that you can't do this damn job. Because I'm going to tell you, I know a lot of people who are identify as neurodivergent who are doing this job, and they're some of the best damn dispatchers in this country.
Amazing. Well, excellent advice. You know, I double down with you there. I agree. Apply, apply, apply. See what happens. And us as an industry, let's make the changes necessary to be more inclusive and to get these folks in our centers because they can serve our communities.
Yeah,
Well, again, thank you so much. I look
absolutely.
forward to hopefully catching one of your sessions at a conference soon. You're doing amazing work, and thank you for being willing to be so vulnerable. I obviously I post my face a lot on the internet and the webs, and it's not easy. So
Yeah,
thank you for being willing to be a face of this conversation.
thank you.
I'll be right back with you. All right, everybody, that was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. I couldn't agree more with every sentiment that Will brought up, but specifically about our centers having to make the changes, create the environments that everybody wants to work in, not just the person who has been working in our centers for X amount of years. So, as always, again, thank you, Will, I'm so genuine. I say going out here onto these platforms, putting yourself out there, telling your story, whatever your story may be, is not for the weak. So I appreciate you being willing to do that in general, let alone on our platform. As always, folks, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you're interested in coming onto the show, you can head to theraspydispatcher.com and sign up and check out Dispatch Dialogues. It is going to be a really good series, and the money we earn from it is going to a really good cause. So definitely register for our next webinar if that's something you're into. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Dispatch podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, or maybe even submitting your own story, you can do all that and more at theraspydispatcher.com. Until next time, stay raspy.